What I'd like to do is show you a 20-minute film on loading the two bombs on the Enola Gay, the boxcar. It's right at the beginning. It's on Tinian in 1945. And this is how we loaded the two bombs onto the aircraft to be carried to Japan for the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh, her, this is Shirley Walker.
This was the beginning, of course, of the atomic age, and we were right at the beginning of it. I'll take any questions for what
How'd
you
you
have.
get a hold of the films?
I got it from the Atomic Museum.
Did you
But-
have to wait a long time?
No, I didn't have to wait. They asked me not to have it remade and give to people or to sell. And I didn't. That's why I couldn't have you take a picture of this thing.
Did the Indianapolis deliver both of the bombs
No,
to Tinian?
just the uranium for the first bomb on Hiroshima. Just one bomb.
It was the Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, and of course after they dropped the uranium off at Tinian, they went up to the Philippine Sea, and that's where they're sunk by the Japanese submarine. And I guess there was only about 300 survivors out of about
1,500 men,
yeah,
something
somewhere
like
in
that.
there. And I know two of the survivors because we appear at some of these military shows, gatherings like this. And some of the things they tell about that is quite unbelievable, because the U.S. Navy didn't know that the ship had been sunk, and they were in the water for 5 days, and they were being eaten by sharks. And because they were in the water that long, some of them went off their heads, and one of them may have said to them, if you go down deep enough, the water is nice and clear, and you could drink it. Well, of course, somebody did. Some of them did, and they drowned, of course. So it was a terrible thing. Anybody else? Yes.
I have three, okay? First of all, how were you chosen to do this mission? Was it by rank or was it by?
No, not by rank. I was only a second lieutenant.
Okay.
Colonel Tibbetts, the one who put the group together, had certain criterion, and he wanted good flyers and good steady people that if they got in trouble they didn't go bonkers and lose their cool. And I like to fly, and I guess I qualified because I was sent to the 509th that went over Utah for training with the 509th.
And then how far was Nagasaki from the primary target?
It was about an hour's flight, 45 minutes to an hour.
And was the average GI aware of the devastation?
The average GI, the ones that
Well,
were...
not the scientists, you know, the people that were on the base, or?
No, this was a highly secret project, and everybody didn't know about the bomb, of course. We were under guard all the time, and we couldn't speak about what we were doing and what operations that was going on about the bomb and the tactics that we used to drop the bomb. So it was highly secret, but everybody didn't know about it until we did it and it was announced.
Which last time did you have by trying to go to the primary target? How much time was lost by waiting? In your book,
45 minutes over the rendezvous point. And we shouldn't have been doing that, because we were only told 15 minutes and then go on to our primary target of Kokura. But the pilot decided to wait 45.
I think you're landing and open out.
Make a turn so you should park it.
John,
Hard stand.
turn it off, we'll get it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Okinawa was a little rough too. If we didn't have the reversible props, I wouldn't be here telling the story today. Because it stopped the aircraft, brought it under control, and we went to the end of the runway, and as we turned off the end of the runway, our number 2 engine quit. We were that low on gasoline. Could have up in the air another 5 minutes or so. We'd either have to ditch in the ocean or make a forced landing on the field that we were flying over.
And they didn't want to acknowledge that they moved. They don't know.
Well, no, we didn't want to say anything because before we got out of the aircraft, Major Sweeney, my pilot, said, let's not say anything about what we did here. Just tell them we're here for gasoline and we're we're gonna go back to Tinian, and that's what we did.
Was it normal to fly without a fire escort?
We never had any fighter escorts. We operated from 30,000 feet, and all we had was just 2 twin 50s in the tail, that's all. That was our armament against the Japanese fighters, but it took them some time to get up to our altitude, so there was no consequence, because we were shot at by anti-aircraft, but they were low and to the left, and that was of no consequence either. Anybody else?
Is the rest of the crew still living?
Pardon?
The rest of the crew still
No,
living?
there's only 4 of us left. Sweeney, the pilot, Albury, the other pilot, myself, and the engineer, Herrick, in Florida, that's all.
How many were on the plane?
Tibbetts crew's only got 3 left. Tibbetts, Van Kirk, and Fairview just died, and the radio man, Nelson. And when we go, that's it.
You told me Bach just died too.
Pardon?
You told me that Bach just died.
Yeah, Bach just died. A week ago, Friday, yeah.
How many were on your ship? How many? were on-
13.
13.
And when we landed at Tinian on our way back, the whole mission took 17 hours. The photographer was waiting for us because we were late in coming back, and he thought that something happened to us and we weren't coming back. But he was there waiting for us, and he says, "I have to take a picture of you fellas as soon as you get out of the aircraft, because I've been waiting here." So we lined up, and then somebody counted 13. And if you're superstitious or not, it was bad for us. 13 was a bad number for us. Anybody else?
If the Japanese hadn't surrendered, was there another bomb ready to go?
We had a 3rd bomb, yeah. That was being brought over, and when my pilot Sweeney and Tibbetts went to see LeMay and Guam, first thing he asked him, he says, "Have you got another one of those things?" He called it another one of those things. And Colonel Tibbetts says, "Yes, we do. And we're bringing it over now." He said, "Well, you get it over here right away." He says, "Because we're going to drop the next one on Tokyo, and you're going to be the pilot," meaning Colonel Tibbetts. We didn't have to do it. We thought one would be enough when they saw the devastation of the bomb, but that wasn't enough. We had to drop 2.
What was the span between the first?
3 days.
3 days.
August 6th and August 9th.
Did they have a thing for the third one?
No. We didn't need it. But everybody signed their names on the bomb while it was in the bomber before we took off. And I can't remember what I put on it. It wasn't anything nice, I'm sure. And I'm sure all the others were the same way too.
There was no possible way that Japan could find out who y'all was after the second time?
No. No, there's no way. We were 1,500 miles from Japan. The round trip to the target to Japan and back was 3,000 miles, so they had no way of knowing who we were and what we were going to do until we dropped the first one. And they didn't know.
After the second?
No, they didn't know who we were. Although Tokyo Rose said that when we got to Tinian, that the 509th was coming to Tinian, and she welcomed us. She welcomed us, like she did, because she knew a lot of the things, but she didn't know what we were there for. She just knew that we were a new bomb group that came to Tinian, and we were going to bomb the Japanese.
If you only had a tail turret, then you would be helpless against fighter jets.
Oh, sure, they came at us from the front.
Why
All
they
we could
design
use
it
is just
that
the 2 twin 50s.
Why did they design it that way?
Because they thought that we could handle the Zero fighters at 30,000 feet. We were just as fast as they were, but of course, getting a shot at it was something else. So we were lucky. Yes,
It looked like when they were loading the second bomb, it was very windy that day.
yeah.
What, was it a storm that caused the cloud cover, or was it just clouds that?
No, just normal conditions that existed over the city at the time, that's all. Because when the bomb exploded, we were in bright sunlight. And when the bomb exploded, we got a bright bluish light that filled the entire aircraft. And then we knew that we had a bomb that could destroy an entire city, and that the bomb was viable. It did go off.
Was the third one better than the second one?
Pardon?
The third bomb that's out here rating, was it better
It
than
was,
the second?
no, it was just as strong as the second one. There was no improvement between the second and the third.
Did you continue flying after the war? Did you continue flying?
Oh, yeah, I joined the reserve. I stayed on active duty until 47. And then they sent me to counterintelligence, and I didn't ask for the assignment, but I could speak, read, and write Italian after a fashion. And to me, that was the only reason, because I went to see the colonel, and I told him that I didn't want the assignment. He said, well, did you ask for it? And I said, no, I didn't ask for it. He said, but all of a sudden, I'm the orders to go to Baltimore, but the school would. So we waited 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to report. We waited 10 days, and we got no answer because he was going to try to have the orders rescinded, sending me to Baltimore and keeping me at Roswell. But we waited the 10 days. Nothing came through, and he said, well, you better clear the base and go on up and report. I went up there and I reported, and I got the story about being a counter spy and being a counterintelligence agent, and I said to him, I said, where do I get my 4 hours? Which meant that I got 50% more pay as long as I got 4 hours a month. And he shook his head and he says, no, he says, you don't fly. I said, I'll get my own 4 hours, don't worry. He said, no, you don't understand. When you transfer from the Air Corps into the Intelligence Corps, you don't fly anymore. I says, no more? And he said, that's right. And I said, no, that's not right. I says, I worked my buns off to get these wings, and you're just going to take them away like that? I said, put me in for discharge, you know where I'm staying. Well, 2 days later, the orders came through from Washington, sending me back to Roswell and going back to the old outfit, to the 509.
I have a couple of questions. What was the overall mood of the crew when you took off versus after the bomb hit?
It was sober because we knew we had a serious job to do, but we knew we had to accomplish the job. Because we were trained to do it, and that's what we wanted to do, and help end the war.
What was the mood of the crew when they were signing the bomb? What was the spirit of the group then?
When we were...
When you're signing the bomb?
No, just jovial, more or less. Somebody was kidding, but there was very nice things that was said on the bomb. And I can't remember what I wrote.
Did Tibbetts brief you on how things went on the first
Oh, sure,
bomb
we
mission
talked to the
before
crewmen.
you took off?
Yeah, we talked to the crewmen when they came back right away to make as much, to get as much knowledge about what happened to them is the same thing was going to happen to us, more or less, except more so. But they told us about the shock waves and everything else.
Tell about your, not to fly by radar, not to route the bomb with radar.
Yeah, well, let me go into the mission. My mission, and see what happened to us. We took off from Tinian at 3:45 in the morning on August 9th, and we were a 3-ship strike force. The boxcar carried the atomic bomb. The radar teeth carried the instrumentation. It was dropped at the same time that the bomb was dropped. They were on parachutes. They stayed in the air longer, so they can record the instrumentation about how the bomb was reacting as far as the scientists were concerned. They wanted to know exactly how it was working. So, dropping the instruments by parachute, they stayed in the air longer, and they gleaned the necessary information that was needed. So the other ship was a photographic aircraft. Now, it took us 7 hours to get to our rendezvous point to the southern tip of Japan. It was over Yakushima, a little island out there. And we got there first, and we were joined about 6 or 7 minutes later by Captain Bach, the one that just died recently. And we were waiting for the third aircraft, the photographic aircraft. Now, we were told to wait 15 minutes only, and then go on to our primary target of Kokura. Well, we waited for 15 minutes, and the photographic aircraft didn't show up. There were 2 of us at 30,000 feet, using all this gasoline and using all this power, which we shouldn't be doing. He didn't show up. My pilot, for some reason, decided to wait a second 15 minutes. Still didn't show up. We waited a third 15 minutes. Now, this was getting to be a little bit too much because the flight plan didn't call for us being there that long. Just 15 minutes and going to Kokura, which was about an hour and 15-minute flight from the rendezvous point. So finally, Sweeney says, we better go on to our primary target, so we took off for Kokura. When we got to Kokura, because of our delay over the rendezvous point, the weather had changed, and they want us to bomb by visual sight only, not by radar. And we immediately started our bomb run. Well, we got at the end of the bomb run, and the bombardier couldn't see his aiming point, and he says, no drop. So we went back and picked up another different heading in hopes of finding an opening in the cloud so we can drop it. Same results with that second bomb run. We did this a third time, same results. We were over the city about 50 minutes. Again, we shouldn't have been there, but we were. And finally, because we couldn't drop it visually, Sweeney said, let's go to our secondary target, which was Nagasaki. Nagasaki was about 45 minutes away, I think. When we got to Nagasaki, the weather conditions were worse. It was between 8/10 and 9/10 cloud cover. It was almost covered. We knew that we couldn't drop the bomb that way, so a decision was made by Major Sweeney and the commander of the Ashworth. He was a naval commander, and he was in charge of arming the bomb. And they decided that because we had this situation that they were going to drop the bomb by radar, which was against orders. So we wasted no time. We started our bomb run immediately, and when you have a radar run in a B-29, the navigator up in front has a scope, and he and the radar operator in the back, they coordinate the run to make sure that they're coming up on the right target. We were about 95% completed on the radar run when up in the nose, Captain Behan hollered, I see it, I've got it. Captain Behan was our bombardier. And he says, I see it, I've got it. And of course the bomb run was relinquished to him like it was supposed to from the beginning. So he had 45 seconds to set up the bomb site and make sure that the drift was killed and we were on right course. And the radar run was pretty good, so he didn't have much to do. But we did drop the bomb, and the minute we dropped the bomb, we made a 60-degree bank to the left and went 155 degrees in the opposite direction, because if we'd gone straight ahead, the bomb falls on a trajectory, we would have been over the point of explosion. And the scientists didn't want us there because it could have been structural damage to the aircraft. We got 3 shock blasts a short time after that. The first one that shook the aircraft up pretty thoroughly, and it scared the hell out of us. Plain English, it scared the hell out of us. There's nothing we could do. If there was structural damage to the aircraft, we'd have to have a forced landing, and we didn't want that, because if they would have found out who we were and they would have captured us, I'm sure they would have kept us alive and tortured us until hell freezes over, because that's their way of getting back naturally. So the first one was the worst. We got a second one a short time later, and that one wasn't as bad as the first one. And we got a third one of lesser intensity than the second one. So we got by those, and of course we wanted to get to Okinawa, which was our emergency landing field, and that was about another hour and 10 minutes away, about that time. When we got there, we made a radio call to land for landing instructions. It was a busy field. We were still contesting the Japanese for the island. They were still fighting on the island, so there was a lot of air traffic, and we called for instructions to land, and we got no answer. We called a second time, we got no answer. We called the third and the fourth time, we got no answer. Of course, our gas supply was critical, and we had to get on the ground as quickly as possible. So Sweeney says, I'm declaring a Mayday, fire the flares, and we're going in. Now, the first flare that was fired was red, which meant we had wounded on board. It wasn't so, but we wanted to get the troops moving down below. And sure enough, as soon as they saw the red flare, the ambulances and the fire wagons were going to the end of the runway to meet us there in case they were needed. Now, our next problem was getting lined up for the active runway, and of course there were aircraft waiting to land before we lined up on it. But we cut 2 or 3 of them out of the pattern, and we got on the approach to the runway, and we wanted to get on the ground again as quickly as we could. And we hit the ground doing about 150 miles an hour, which is much too fast for a B-29. And when we hit the runway, we started to veer to the left. And a little further back from the runway, the active runway, were aircraft that were assigned to the field itself. And they had bombers and fighters and whatever they had there. But I'm sure they were full of gasoline and ammunition. And if we didn't have the reversible props, which we activated, and brought the aircraft back under control and went down to the end of the runway again, and I wouldn't be here to tell a story because we would have smacked into them and I wouldn't be here. But then, and again, we went to the end of the runway and we turned off. Our number 2 engine quit. We were that low on gasoline. If we were up in the air another 5 minutes, we'd have to ditch or have a forced landing on the field. So with that, we went to park the aircraft, and Major Sweeney says, let's not say anything about what we did. We're just telling them here for gasoline, and we're going back to Tinian. So when we got out, when we parked the aircraft, we got out, and GIs were swarming around because they had never seen a B-29. We were the first B-29 that ever landed on Okinawa. So they asked all kinds of questions, and we answered them as best we could. And we had to go get something to eat. So we got on the trucks, went up to the mess hall. By this time, the word had gotten around that another bomb had been dropped in Japan. So we got in line, and we got in front of the GI that was dishing out the food. And as we came abreast of him, he said, gentlemen, did you hear about the bomb? Another bomb that was dropped in Japan? And of course, we said no. We knew nothing about it. And then he said the strangest thing, and I don't know where he got this information, but it's true. He said, well, I'd like you gentlemen to know that the airplane came from this base. It was a P-38, and the bomb was the size of a baseball. The size of it. And of course, we just said, you know, so we took our food, sat down, and went back to the field. We were gassed, of course, and we took off and went back to Tinian. We got there about 10:30, 11:30 that night. Glad to be home because it was something that we had lived through that we hadn't expected them to go through that kind of a situation as far as the mission was concerned. Now I'll take more questions.
First of all,
What happened to the other 2 planes? that
Good
were-
girl, you're listening. That's what I don't say anything about that third aircraft to see if the audience is going to pick it up.
Not
Third?
not the third, the second one too. There was the photographer and then.
No, just the photographer aircraft was the only one that was missing. There were 2 of us jetting around.
Well, but the second one came with you to Okinawa?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the one that was missing, the photographic aircraft, he was on his way back to Tinian already.
Oh.
But he got word, they radioed him, tell him to go back and be with us on Okinawa, because they wanted the 3 aircraft to be together.
Yeah.
And when we got there, I talked to the navigator, his name was Stanky, and I said, Stanley, his name was. I said, Stan, where were you? He said, we're waiting for you up there 45 minutes, we're wasting all this gasoline, we should have been there only 15 minutes, we were there 45. He said, we were there, and I said, well, how can you say you were there? I said, we were at 30,000 feet, 2 aircraft were there, your aircraft wasn't there. I said, I know you weren't there. He said, we were there. And then I said, no, you weren't there. I said, how come? Then he pointed to the pilot, he said, ask him. Well, the pilot was a major. I was a second lieutenant, and I wasn't about that. Show up. But Tibbetts, when we got back to Tinian, he had a hearing, or he talked to everybody involved. Since the mission was more or less a success, nothing was ever done. He just forgot about it and let it go.
Why didn't Bach pilot the plane?
Because we swapped aircraft. The Great Artiste, which was our crew aircraft, our personal crew aircraft, was on the first mission with Tibbetts, the Hiroshima mission, and of course it was set up to drop the instrumentation, just like he did for the Nagasaki mission. We had 3 days between the 6th and the 9th. We were going to lose the weather, and Tibbetts didn't want to waste any more time. And he also wanted the Japanese to know that there was no fluke, that we had this one bomb, that we had another one waiting for him, in case, we want to drop it on him and let them know there was no fluke about the first bomb. So we swapped airplane is what we did. Colonel Tibbetts said, well, swap airplanes. So Captain Bach flew our aircraft, the Great Artiste, and we flew his aircraft, the Boxcar, and that's how that came about. One of those little quirks in fate. Anybody else?
I was wondering, you say you left the Army in 47,
Yeah, active duty in 47.
active duty.
But then I was discharged from this side of the room, walked on the other side, joined the reserve, came back to O'Hare in 1948, and from about 1950 until 63, I flew out of O'Hare with the troop carrier squadron out there.
Oh.
And then we used to go out there once a month to fly, to qualify and train, and the commanding officer used to say, well, I don't know if we're going to be here next year because There's no money coming through from the government for the reserves. So a fellow from the Air Force Academy came through looking for liaison officers to talk to these youngsters that are in high school that about in their junior year and their senior year, they graduated and become a cadet out at the Air Force Academy. And I thought, well, the academy's gonna be around for a while. I wanna get my 20 years in so I can get my pension, even though I was in the reserve. So I applied and they accepted me. So from 63, I think, or 64 until 72 when I retired as lieutenant colonel, I was a liaison officer, and I took care of all the south side schools in the suburbs. So I was the mayorist and I did all of them. They used to have these career nights, and I used to come to the school and show them a film on the Air Force Academy. It was a promotional film. Kids that were interested, they got a hold of me and I told them what to do. They got a hold of their senators and their congressmen so they can apply and take the test. And if they were lucky enough to pass and become one of the appointees, why they got to go to the academy.
Would you care to comment about how many lives would have been lost had we had to invade Japan?
If we had invaded Japan, we would have lost at least 1 million men between wounded and killed. I've got a book, they're having it made, that tells all about the invasion, what the Japanese had planned for us. And believe me, they had a lot of cute things. One of the things that they did, they had women and children trained with poison sticks. At the minute the invasion started, they had to go down to their assigned places on the beach, and as the GIs came on board, they were going to stick them with poison sticks. That was just one thing. They had a lot of things waiting for us, and it would have been a bloodbath. Believe me, some of these kids that are running around today wouldn't be here today because their grandfathers would have been in the invasion, they wouldn't have had their father, and their fathers wouldn't have had them, and they wouldn't be here. So it would have been a bad situation. Some people today still think that we shouldn't have dropped the atomic bomb. Well, to me, I have an answer for them. If it saved American lives, that's the bottom line. If we had the weapons to do it with, to end the war and save American lives, that's all that was needed as far as any of the two crews that participated in the atomic bombing. We were all in unison about that. We had no questions about that. Anybody else?
Where you actually were?
23.
And Tibbetts, you were,
He was 5 years, he was 28 years old. He's 5 years older. He's still around. He's 85 years old. Oh, yeah, but he used to fly Eisenhower and all the big generals around in Europe. In England. He flew 25 missions and then he got into 29 and somehow he got mixed up with being the commanding officer of the 509 that he put together.
It's off the subject, but you read that Roswell and supposed spacecraft went down? Or?
I left Roswell in February, and in June, I think, between February and June that happened. But had I been on the field, I would have been nosing around where they had these little men, you know. And I don't know, I probably would have gotten in trouble, but I was going to nose around and find out. Because I was curious as to, in fact, I was called by a scientist who was writing a book about it, wanted to know if I had seen anything. And I said, no, I left too early from Putin. I said, but I sure would have tried had I been there, because that was something to see if it was true. But to this day, our government hasn't said anything one way or the other. So I don't know.
Interesting times.
Yeah, it would have been. I think I would have gotten in trouble because I was trying to at least get a look at to see if it was true that they had these little guys with big heads, big eyes, and whatever. But I didn't get a chance to. Anybody else?
This is kind of a strange question, but I know it was your duty and all that. Did anybody that you know of ever have psychological repercussions, nightmares or whatever from?
The two crews that dropped the two bombs, nobody had a problem except one fella. His name was Claude Etherly. He was one of the pilots. He was the weather ship that flew an hour ahead of the Enola Gay, and it was his job to radio the weather back to the Tibbetts and the Enola Gay to let them know what the conditions were. He was the only one that went a little bit off his rocker, to the extent, when I say off his rocker. He wanted to get a regular Air Force commission. They didn't give it to him, and that kind of set him off. And so he ended up robbing post offices and grocery stores and gas stations and stuff like that. And we had our first reunion in 1962 at the old hotel there. It was at the Edgewater Beach. And I saw him when we were signing in, but he wasn't the same fella. He was a good pilot, but he wasn't the same fella. He just wasn't the same fella at all. And but that was the only one that was illiterate. Tibbetts, to his credit, when we were briefed about the missions, he said, if there's anybody here that feels that they don't want to be part of this because you're killing a lot of people, speak up now. You'll step down. You'll be replaced, and no action will be taken against you. No court martial or nothing.
How many people were killed by each of those?
In the first bomb, there were about 78,000. Our bomb only about 50, only because, again, Nagasaki being a secondary target, they had mountains on one side of the city, and that restricted the bomb blast. The bomb blast and the heat that was generated by the bomb that killed most of the people. I'm sure you've seen pictures of the charred bodies. And but that restricted the amount of damage and the amount of killing, because after the war, or when the war ended, of course, our forces went in there, and at the bottom of the mountains, some of the villages that were there were still they were intact pretty much. The damage there.
Where did the other two planes come from on the two missions, the ones that were supporting photography?
From our squadron, yeah. It was the 509 Composite Group, 393rd Bomb Squadron. When we got back to Roswell, Tibbetts went to Washington, and he talked to the powers that were then, and he said, if you offer a commission, a direct commission, he says, I'll guarantee that 97% of the people that are with me in the 509 will stay on active duty. Well, we were an independent group. We could operate by ourselves anywhere in the world. We were trained and we had the experience, but the government didn't buy it. So when Tibbetts came back and told us that, no, government isn't going to do that, and everybody got out. Yeah.
True that Tibbetts was decorated, was only the pilot decorated, or
No,
did everybody on the
that's a
crew?
strange thing, I'm glad you asked. Tibbetts got the Distinguished Service Cross, as you saw in the film. The rest of his crew got the Silver Star. On our crew, Sweeney got the Silver Star, the rest of us got the Distinguished Flying Cross. How they arrived at that, I don't know. We were in the same airplane. But that's the way it was. And that's the way they do things in the military, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
How did they feel about the Smithsonian Institute?
Well, that was a bad thing with Tibbetts. He was really hurt by it, so much so that he gave up his membership there. But he just couldn't understand these revisionists trying to change history and doing what they did to the aircraft, because he felt that because it was the first one to drop an atomic bomb and introduce atomic warfare into the world, he thought it should be revered just like Lindbergh's plane was. It's hanging up there in the Smithsonian. But he will have his day in 2003. It'll be all put together in one piece, and it'll be displayed at Dulles. They're going to build a hangar for it, and you'll be able to see it there. If you want to see the boxcar, it's at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. It's been there since 1962. And every time I go there, I pat it on the side and say,
How did it come about the name Boxcar?
Boxcar, the fellow, his name was Bach, B-O-C-K. And when you put the nose art on, all the crew members submit names. Somebody submitted Boxcar, and that was chosen as the name to go under the nose. And you could see a flying boxcar with wings. Boxcar, it's all one word. Yes, anybody else? Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for...
Really, thank you, this is very,
Thank you
very
for
interesting.
listening, and I hope that in some small way you've learned a little bit more about the atomic bomb and the ones that ended the war. Everybody remembers the Enola Gay, and, well, they should, but remember that the The boxcar was the second one, and that's the one that ended the war. And that's my claim to fame. That's what I tell people. Yeah, I guess, they're $22 and I'll sign it individually.
And there's a table over there,
Okay.
and, we can get the light turned on.
Yeah.
We're trying to determine something.
One, Fifi,
Handle court.
that's been flying for a while now. It makes all the air shows and goes all over the country.
Privately owned.
It's owned by the Air Force, the Confederate Air Force. Yeah. But it's expensive to have to come and participate in the air show with
He's got
the
dinner.
cars, gasoline. Yeah. We had 7,250 gallons on board when we took off each again. And that should have been enough to take care of the mission going and coming, and then a little bit more for a safety feature. But it didn't happen that way, because we had 640 gallons in the rear bomb bay that we couldn't transfer up to the wing tanks and into the engine. Before we took off, that was the situation. And I saw Sweeney and the engineer, O'Hara, go over and talk to Colonel Tibbets. And what the upshot was, although I didn't know it at the time, I didn't know it until we had run three bomb runs over Kokura. But the upshot of that visiting Tibbets was that my pilot Sweeney went over and told him we got the problem about the gasoline. And Tibbets says, well, don't worry about that. That 640 gallons that you got in the rear bomb bay is ballast for the 10,000-pound bomb that you got in the front. Well, Sweeney thought on it a little bit. He said, well, okay, we'll go. I didn't know about this until, again, I was only a second lieutenant. Until we got over Kokura and we had the 3 bomb runs, and then we had to figure our gasoline supply to find out where we were. And we figured out that we had enough gasoline for 1 bomb run to Nagasaki and then going to Okinawa. And that's why it became ticklish for us to get on the ground as quickly as we could at Okinawa.
Are you originally from Minnesota?
Pardon?
Are you originally from Minnesota?
No, I'm from Pullman. You know where Pullman is?
Yes.
I was born in Pullman. My father came over here. We had a little Italian restaurant in the basement, just a half a block from the gate on 111th and Langley. And my father's brother came over here in 1885 or 84, and he opened a little restaurant. And he brought my father over here in about 1900, and to work in the restaurant with him. My father didn't like it, so he went to work for Pullman as a switchman. Well, he was going with my mother at the time over in Italy, and of course he saved the money to send for her and bring her over here. Well, she came over here with her brother, but the word was they had to get married now. No fooling around, no waiting 3 or 4 days, now. So they went to St. Andrews on 115th Street there and got married.
What high school did you go to?
Pullman Tech,
Pullman Tech.
yeah, that's the technical school that was
Yeah,
at
we know.
Pullman. put
When
up
did you
for-
graduate?
Pardon?
What year did you
40,
graduate?
1940.
40.
I'm 78 years old, pushing
Yeah, I graduated
79.
in 41 from Fanger.
Pardon?
41, I was at Fanger.
Yeah, you were with, well, Griffin played there, and Floric, and Barwagon, and Barwegan there. Yeah, I knew some of those fellows.
Same street for 2 years.
Is it true that one of the reasons that the Japanese surrendered was that the Japanese scientists tried to develop an atomic bomb?
They were doing it.
And they failed.
No, I don't know about failing, but they were working on it, and the Germans were doing the same thing, because they had to have some kind of heavy water to manufacture the bomb. Heavy water was being manufactured up in Norway, so the Allies went over there and found that they planned to make it heavy water to stymie the Germans from making their own.
Sure.
Both nations were doing it.
It's Irish.
And I don't know, like you say, that they couldn't do it, I don't know. They were trying. Don't be afraid to ask questions now, that's what's why I'm here. Because the more you ask me, the more it jogs my memory. I'm getting old. The more it jogs my memory, and I think of a little thing happening.
Should we close and then we could have refreshments and you can sign the book and sell the book and ask them, then can ask you more questions?
Oh, sure. I'll be
June, did
here.
you have anything yet?
No.
Okay. So we're just gonna have a few announcements here. You needed to say something, right?
Yeah.
This is the museum director, Cynthia O'Gorick.
I just wanted to let everybody know, if there are any students from Thornton High School here, you need to see me for your validated card. And, out on the table, we have some giveaways from the museum from our summer program. They have to do with that typewriter exhibit. And if anybody likes to do word scramble puzzles and things, take that home. And on the backside, there's a brief history of typewriters and the Underwood from 1900. And I wanted to know if we could run the video one more time, because some students also got lost on their way here.
Yeah, sure.
For Legion. And for
John,
Legion, then what?
has this been rewound?
Okay, we could probably do that in a few minutes, yeah. I just want, we'll do that in a few
Okay.
minutes. Just want to make a few announcements.
I'll leave that up to you.
I think the next big thing we have is October 8th. This is, as most of you probably know, our 25th year of the Historical Society, our big celebration. We've been having something just about every month.
You ordered Devin.
The next thing is the house walk on Sunday, October 8th. We'll be starting at Hoot School and at 1 o'clock, right? At 1 o'clock, and then we'll be walking around together to each of the sites. There are 3 or 4 sites, there may be more, where we'll actually be able to go through. Two homes we'll be going through, the Nortmeyer house and the Hahn house. St. Paul's Church, trying to think, Mahler's Garage, there may be a few others. We will have a reception at St. Paul's after. That will be the last thing we'll do. After we're through with our walk, we'll have to get into cars and go out to Seton Prairie to St. Paul's Church on Walner Road. And there will be a reception there. We'll be looking at the church and the school there, District 159, the original school. And there's lots of building going on back there. The district offices are building on the back, but that'll be an interesting thing to see. But what do we have after that? November, I believe.
Radio show.
Oh, yes, our November regular meeting will be Old Time Radio Show. You want to tell us a little bit about that, June? I'm not familiar.
Well, this is a group that have kind of gotten into volunteering with old-time radio programs. They read the script, they stand at the microphone, they read the script, and they have people who do the sound effects, the horses, hooves, and all of those things. And they will do 2 different programs, our choice. I think it's going to be my choice. So probably 1 comedy and 1 mystery. And this will be free. At other places where they have gone, they have charged $7 to $9 admission. So if you would like to come here for free to see this program, it will be available to you.
Okay, and the house walk also will be free. Then in December, we have our annual candlelight dinner concert, which is not free. That's $25, I believe. We'll probably at that price, I'm not real sure. And that'll be in the newspapers and everything, so you'll be able to see when that comes up. And
Our program with the dinner
oh, sorry.
will be Carol Putnam, who is going to, I'm striking out now.
Dickens story.
Yeah, that she's doing the story of Dickens in London. Other years, we've always had a concert of some kind, but this year we're gonna try this, and I've heard her, and she's very good, and everybody raves about her, so you might like to keep that in mind, and that will be in St. Paul's Church, both the meal and the talk. And in February, we're going to have Donna Daniels. Max and Donna Daniels are the 2 best Lincoln impersonators in the Chicago area. And we had them about 10 years ago. And this time, Donna is going to do Mrs. Lincoln as she was after the assassination. Everybody thinks that she absolutely went nuts and she got put into an insane asylum. And part of that is true, but there's a lot more to the story. And she comes dressed in the black dress of the period. And it will be a very interesting program, and that will be great.
And in January,
Right.
we got a bus trip going to medieval times. If you wanna see jousting and eat with your fingers, it's gonna be a Sunday afternoon, we're gonna be gone 5 hours, and we're gonna assemble in the front of this parking lot. And we've gone to Pullman, we've done a cruise on the river and the canal in Chicago, so twice a year we try to do some go-away thing. And that's what's gonna be in January.
Do you have any idea of the cost yet?
I thought it was like $30. We're going on a school bus.
That keeps the cost down, going on a school bus.
So you don't have to drive there.
But you get to eat with your fingers, and that is a
Yeah.
real experience.
You get to see the king and queen and horse jousting, and it's kind of interesting.
So those things will be in the newspaper. They will be in our newsletter, and if you want to be added to a mailing list, if you're not a member of the Historical Society here, let us, either Joanne or myself or June know tonight, and we'll get you on a mailing list too, so you can know about those events. Is there anything else anybody has? Okay, then I guess we'll close and have our refreshments and talk to Mr. Olivi some more.
Okay, well, let us sit